What's going on, everyone? This is Dustin from Journey to Master, and today we have Emily.
Hello, everybody.
This is my wife.
Hello, world.
So today we wanted to do an episode. There's been a few people out there that have made comments on the YouTube channel that they want to know what it's like running the office, and some people have emailed me and said, hey, would you mind having Emily email me and kind of explain like how you guys did things and like how you ran the office. So I just wanted to do an episode with her. So first and foremost, what was your background, I guess? Like, what made you be able to pick this up? Because I feel like you kind of picked it up and ran with it, and you did a really good job.
Yeah.
Like, we ran into problems here and there.
Yeah.
Like,
well, everybody does.
Yeah, lacks of knowledge.
Lacks of knowledge.
But like, what did you have, I guess, that made you be able to do it well?
Really just a background in administrative support. Pretty much everywhere I've ever worked has been in the background of a certain industry. For the longest time, it was law firms, because that's what my mom did, and so I just got my foot in there. And just a lot of just taking care of the documents.
But you didn't ever have like a degree, you didn't have like most of your jobs were reception, like entry level kind of stuff, and then you worked your way into like administrative assistant. Yeah. So what kinds of stuff did you do when you worked for those jobs?
Well, for the law firms, it's a lot of document editing, everything from like pretty much just taking the weight off what the paralegals can't do, because especially certain times of year in medical malpractice law firms or insurance defense law firms was the last one I worked with. Everybody is almost constantly slammed, and then it kind of comes in waves throughout the year. So I've always just entered every job I've ever had kind of like with open palms, like, how can I help you? And so people just kind of give me the backlog, what they can't handle. And at the beginning, it always starts with them just trusting my abilities and trusting me to run with it, kind of like, opening the floodgates and just seeing what I can handle. And then constantly either meeting or exceeding their expectations, and then they give me a little bit more, and they give me a little bit more. It's really across the board. I mean, most of it is
a lot of computer data entry. Like, you did a lot of stuff with Excel, a lot of Word stuff. You would put documents together for lawyers and stuff like that. But beyond that, to run the back end of our company, like, you had experience answering phones and like knowing how to talk politely to people.
Customer service was probably the biggest one. Yeah. And I only spent maybe like 6 months of my entire working career doing customer service, like 8 hours a day.
So knowing that, I guess that's what I'm trying to get to, is like, she didn't have any formal experience in doing any of this. Nope. Like, getting into running an office, most of the stuff that she had to do was just stuff that I had seen at other electrical companies that I was like, hey, I watched these guys do this. This is how they kept timesheets. This is, how we tracked materials. How was the getting used to what materials are called and like ordering materials from supply houses? Oh man,
that was probably one of the hardest things, because there's not a universal language, which would be really helpful, but there's just not. So that was probably the hardest thing, because between supply houses and Home Depot and Lowe's, first of all, nobody has everything, and then the second part of it is that everybody calls everything something different. Yeah. So that was, how
did you get used to it though? Like, what did you come up with that made it easier for you to be able to just...
Well, calling things the wrong thing.
A lot.
A lot.
A coupling a connector and a connector of
Or
shelf.
like an anchor, a wall mount. Because it mounts something to the wall. That's what
Every
it is.
time she
but
calls
it helps me.
An anchor, it's like, I want to rip my fucking face off. It's not a wall mount. It's an anchor.
But it helped me remember.
Yeah.
Wall mount is an anchor, and a coupling is a fitting, and a connector is a nipple, and...
Dude, how about how like incredibly sexual all of the things are?
Oh my god, so like
a whole hog,
a lug
nipples, nut. And yeah.
Male-dominated industry.
So moving on. So beyond that, like, what was your day-to-day like when you were in the office and I was out in the field?
A lot of it just taking incoming calls, and that was probably where most of the paperwork came from. Even though really only like 25% of those jobs came through, the other big thing about being on the phone with customers all the time, especially in a construction industry or when you're building something, I really don't call this blue collar because I don't know why. But in an industry where it's literally guys in the field working, the customers, like every single customer wants to be the first priority.
Yeah.
And so it wasn't difficult for me to look at a schedule and to delegate your time or my time if I would go out and help him on some jobs, to delegate like what he can feasibly get done in 8 hours a day. That was never the problem. The problem was that everybody wants to be on the top of your list at all times. And especially the new guys and the guys who are just shopping for numbers. And I think the people shopping for numbers were probably the biggest waste of time.
But it's something it's part of it.
Yeah, I mean, like they're weeding us out and I'm weeding them out. You know, if you don't have the patience to just stay the course and wait, you know, a week for quality work, that's fine. Go on to somebody else. We're going to use our time for what we know we can do right now, and not overextend ourselves.
I think what was hard for both of us is like we're both only children, and like acceptance is kind of a big thing for both of us.
Yeah.
But we always wanted to get every single job and make every single customer happy. And I learned like that's just not possible. There's people that are just going to be pissed off because they're just fucking pissed off people, man.
Yep.
And there's people that are gonna, when you give them a price, they're gonna be like, that's so expensive, and it's like, okay, we'll go find somebody else. But that was really hard to do. It's like, oh, okay, well, I'll try to work with you. You know, at first you're always trying to like, you're starting to think like, fuck, I'm new at this, maybe my pricing is too expensive.
And we're both extremely empathetic, so we want people to feel comfortable. Like, we want to please people very,
so that
very
was
badly.
Kind of a downfall. That's
I think that might have been the biggest thing, was that we didn't charge enough.
I was just going to ask
even,
if you thought...
even with the prices we did charge, I would say about 75% of people were balking at it. Yeah. Like, that's too expensive. I'm like, this is electrical work. This is not like plumbing where you can maybe go get a guidebook or go online or watch a couple of YouTube videos and try to do it yourself. This is deadly. This is not just like flooding your house.
Yeah, and my big thing was like, I felt like I couldn't get away with charging the same price that like somebody that's been doing this for 30 years is charging, because, you know, like I have people that I look up to that are older men that have been doing this a long time, and they still do by far better work, more efficient. They know the answers right away, you know, like they just have the experience. So for them to charge what they charge for their company's rate,
makes sense.
I just never felt like I should be charging that until I got my experience up enough and efficiency up enough and everything like that. But I also had one guy tell me that to figure out what you should be charging people, you pretty much, like, there's ways of figuring out what your rate should be based off of like how much your bills are annually, and then you break that down to monthly, what you need to pay those bills, and daily, what you need to pay those bills, and then hourly to pay those bills. And that's just what you need to charge to keep everything floating. But then to add margin on top of it and charge for materials, that's kind of another thing. But the general rule of thumb that I was told going into this was that you should, whatever you charge, if you're getting every single job, you're not charging enough. And if you're not getting any jobs, you're charging too much. So there's like a good middle ground in there where 50% of the people go find someone else and 50% of the people stick with you. So I think that we were there, like we were charging $92 an hour. That was per guy.
Yep.
So if we had to have 2 guys on a job, we would double that, but we'd also charge a $40 trip charge. And at first we started charging 30% markup on all of our materials. So if we spent $100 in materials, you know, we would add another like $33 to that for profit. And then we realized that we were getting our lunch eaten because the bills were just so much. So we started trying to figure out like, okay, should we raise our hourly rate? And then, you know, people can call around and shop around and see what other people's rates are. And do we want to seem like we're more expensive or less expensive? Well, the other thing you can do is just raise your markup on your materials, and that actually does pad your margin quite a bit. So like we started charging 50% markup. And people were okay with that. And then I figured, like, well, shit, maybe I can even go up to 100%. The problem is when you get up to like $3,000 in materials, you can't charge people 100% markup. Like, that's just fucking ridiculous. So you kind of just have to work it. And that's why I was always the one, you know, like I taught Emily at a certain point to do estimates. And I was like, you know, just watch all these estimates that I do. We had a formal form that she typed up, and it had like labor, materials, and it had all these things, so I could line item every single part of a job. And then she could sit there and add up all the numbers of the labor, all of the materials and everything. And she got to doing it so much, like 7 or 8 times a day for an entire year, to where we were at the point where she could just do it herself. So she would write things up, and she'd be like, all right, well, I think on this other job you said that installing each recessed can was about this much time, and I know the materials because I made this spreadsheet of what materials cost. And so she would come up with all this stuff, and she would just at the end of the day like hand me 5 estimates and be like, hey, I wrote all these up, what do you think of this, what do you think of this? And I would change the numbers on it. But it's really, there's no exact science to this. You just like, you write up everything how you think it should be, and then you got to sit back and look at it and be like, okay, am I really going to make any money on this? Is this worth my time? Or sometimes too, you have to be like, am I charging way too much for this? Like, can I get away with charging less than this? And go ahead, I'm sorry.
It's okay. At the very end of me doing estimates and doing them, first of all, sight unseen, like you're just giving me a plan and I'm going off of that. The other thing that really helped me be able to do estimates was going to jobs with you and working with you, so I could see, and even if it was something that I couldn't help you with and you can just fly through, like seeing that you can do like 4 recessed cans in a little kitchen in about an hour, and that's right.
Well, it depends. I mean, it depends on like,
again,
a lot of factors.
It depends, but like just making up kind of this rubric in my head by physically going to jobs with him and seeing what he can do, and then maybe getting my hands into it and see what I can do and see what like
she has a tool belt and she rocks that shit, by the way.
I do.
I think you almost liked working in the field more than you did in the office.
I'm also that kind of person.
You're a country girl.
I am a country girl. I would much rather like hurt myself and start bleeding than sit at a desk all day, but I'm also really good at sitting at a desk all day, so it's kind of like, you know, what are you gonna do?
Okay, so talk about some of the forms and like some of the procedures that we did that you think were really, really good, and that might help some other you know, like couple that's trying to do what we did.
Okay, so the first thing is a new customer contact card, and so basically anytime anybody calls in that's brand new, I have this form. This
customer contact card is actually a really good idea. Every time the phone rang, she would write down like the date, where they got our information from, who referred them to us, when they really wanted us to come out and do the work.
If it's an emergency, if they want us to come out and quote it, or if they want a quote over the phone, which means that they need to you know, send us plans. Like if they want a quote sight unseen, then I have to circle that down and let them know, okay, this is our email address, you need to provide us with some information. Another thing, I think our email address and our website, it was a little tedious.
What do you mean?
Just spelling it out, like
livewire-electrical.com. Yeah, because there's other Livewire companies like in New York and shit like that.
Yeah.
So
Then and that's
like
just
le.com.
That's just a small detail. Yeah. But put that away. Bye bye.
Well, hold on. Let me back up for just a second. So one thing that we did, like you were extremely organized and tedious about keeping organization. So that one form is just one form.
Yeah, that was the very beginning.
But what we did is we created files for every single customer that we did work for. If we didn't do work for them, we didn't keep their information. But that first document was the first thing that Emily would put in the folder. And we had every bit of contact information, emails, because at a certain point we would start marketing to these people after they had already been a customer for a while, and keeping on, you know, like writing something that says like Merry Christmas or whatever, because you have their email address, is a really smart thing to do. So just like keeping really good documentation of everything, keeping receipts, writing on the receipts what they were for, materials, like keeping track of write-offs.
Yeah. Okay, so just really quickly.
Sorry,
it's okay.
You I love you.
I love you too. So first customer contact card, and then if that actually converts into a lead, or if I schedule a site visit, and that's another field that's on the customer contact card. Basically, as soon as anybody goes on our schedule, then I convert the customer contact card to a work order sheet, which basically has all this the same information. It's just in a different layout that's really easy for somebody in the field to just open it up, and it's exactly the same every time, just, you know, different people, different information.
And we colored that one yellow.
And that
so
one was
like
yellow.
Our field sheet that all the technicians could look at, and they have every bit of information about the entire job and customer and everything.
And then we had a packet that went in every folder if the guys are going to go do a site visit, and that has the yellow work order form, material requisition sheet, which I think was green.
Which explain that a little bit.
So the material rec sheet, so there's basically 2 pieces of paper when you go on a site visit that you absolutely need with you. One is a material rec sheet, so you can line out your materials and know exactly what everything costs per unit. And the other one is the, what did we call it for the hours? That one was like a return to work form.
Well, we had a scope. We had two things were
That's
scope
what it was.
of work and material
and material rec.
And it was basically like a guy could go out to the field and start formulating what they think, you know, like an estimate. They could write down like, number 1, we're going to install 4 cans in the kitchen. Number 2, we're going to install a 3-way switch across those cans. Like, kind of get detailed line by line so that I could sit there and be like, okay, that'll take 2 hours, that'll take a half hour, that'll take, you know. So they have just the one sheet that's all about like the scope of work and figuring out hours, and then the other sheet was the tech would write down what materials we're going to need, from like building it in their mind from like the very first point all the way through the circuit and everything, and coming up with all of the materials. So those were like really, really important things. And even if the tech didn't use those, I would still use them at home to write everything down and quote myself. It was just super helpful having that.
Yeah, and then the only other stuff was that would go in there for the field packet is miscellaneous stuff, like if there was an important email or if they emailed me the plans, put the plans in there. So basically, whoever goes out on any job should always have the exact same packet ready for them, and it's color coded so that just visually it's a lot easier to work through than just having every sheet of paper be white, and then like you're really having to be like, okay, this is the material rec and this is the scope of work. And keeping the material rec and the scope of work separate means that you can do like job 1, install 4 cans in the entryway, and then on the material rec sheet you do job 1, 4 cans, however much wire, wall mounts, connectors, like all, you know,
the whole thing.
all of that stuff. So as far as documents, that was, and I think the documentation was really where we nailed it, because we were, first of all, we were flying through paper. I nailed it.
Yeah.
I nailed
it.
And then the way we had our folders at the office was kind of like the second layer of organization that I had. So for every guide at the end, we had 4 people. We had you, 2 employees, and me, and everybody had their folder, again color coded. And then we had a folder for new intake forms, which is my folder, and I just put everything in there and work through it as it comes. And then a folder for site visit needed, which means that it's definitely on the schedule and that somebody's going out to look at this job. And then after that, quote needed, which obviously means that the site visit is done, and the next thing is for me to put the estimate together. And then quote for review was for you. And you,
for me to like take home at the end of the night, and she'd have like 4 or 5 quotes, jobs in there that I need to give her quotes
and he goes through all of those. And then after quote review, we had quote pending, which means that he's approved the quote, I have sent it to the customer, and we are waiting to hear back from them. We also had a 30-day expiration on all of our estimates. So if the customer didn't get back to us in 30 days, it's just kind of a safeguard thing to do, because even if you don't change your prices every month, it gives the customer like a little bit of a notice, like, hey, we have a certain lead time, like we need to either schedule this in 30 days or we're going to have to start from the beginning. Not that we have to do a site visit again, but that if you don't get back to us in 30 days, we're going to have to rework the numbers.
And we were really doing that more for the sake that like we still had no clue what we were charging. At the beginning we were just like, you know, it might get to the point where we're so damn busy that we might want to throw out a higher number at a different point because we realize we screwed ourselves or something like that. So it's just a good idea to give your estimates an expiration date, like 30, 60 days, something like that. That way, because you're going to find out after 6 months that you were charging way too little in the beginning.
Yeah, or way too much again if you're not getting any work.
Folder that we
after
had.
quote pending then it goes into the material. So after quote pending, if it's 30 days, pretty much like on the 25th day, I would email the customer and say like, or I'd kind of do it in stages. I do like 10 days, 20 days, 25 days. If I email them 3 times about this quote that's pending and they don't get back to me and I can't schedule it, I'll email them again. And if they don't get back to me, I just, you know, I'm not going to spin my wheels for one customer when I have a stack of people that are, first of all, already on the schedule, that we already have, like that we're already taking draws from, we're already taking money from, it's already on the books. That's way more important to focus on than, you know, spinning your wheels, try to get in contact with one person for like a $700 job. Even if it's thousands of dollars, it's a waste of time to really like go out of your way to try to get one estimate approved by the customer. So
you had a material pending folder too, don't forget about that.
Yes, so after quote pending, when the quote is approved, then we go to material pending, which means that, first of all, obviously the quote's been approved, the material has been sent, like a supply list to the supply houses, or it's in the process of getting got from, you know, if you have to go to Home
we're
Depot.
Just waiting on materials for the job.
So that's material pending, or that's material needed. Which one was... We had 2 of those.
It's been too long.
I know.
Now. But okay, so the whole point of all of this, the whole reason she's going through every single folder. I love you.
I love you too. We're both very long-winded, only children. Sorry.
So the whole reason that she's going through all that is that we actually had a huge board that we had all of these files that were hung on the wall. And that, what it allowed us to do is go in the morning and look at every single job and where the status of the job was, and we would know if there are certain jobs that are ready for us to go do, and so we could build our schedule off that. And she would look through and be like, okay, well, this job, this customer is wondering where the hell we are, but their job's still in material, or in quote pending, so let's open the folder. And she would put notes for everything that she was doing the whole time, and she'd be like, no, I emailed them back on the 10th and I've been waiting for approval for the quote. And so she would email back and be like, I never got an approval for your quote. And so it just keeping really, really good records and keeping things organized just makes, because at some point you're probably gonna have like 60 jobs going and 2 guys out in the field. It's a fuckload of work that just gets overwhelming.
And if you have a couple of stacks of folders, that's not gonna cut it. I think at the end we had something like 15 separate folders, and all the way to the end of a job is payment pending, payment received, and the very last folder is have the checks cleared. And after that folder, checks get stapled, it goes in a file folder.
We had 15 folders, you mean like 15 processes?
Yes, like 15 different steps to the process, from new customer contact card all the way to have the checks cleared.
Yeah, and I think that could have been cut down a lot.
It worked for me.
I know, but 4 of them were from the field. Like we would come back and there'd be 4 folders that would say complete, in progress, quote pending, material pending. And so the guys would drop it in one of those folders, and that would let you know what the fuck you have to do with that file and what's going on with that customer. So there's a lot of things that you could probably come up with to cut a lot of that stuff out. But the whole key is just like super organization and just keeping good records of everything. The other question that I was going to ask you is, well, I feel that a large part of our success in how many customers we had and the great relationships that we had with people was due to how we interacted with people. And I think that people, when you called and people talked to you, they kind of just like instantly loved you. They were like, oh my God, this girl's so sweet and she's bubbly and goofy, and like being real personable got us a lot of work and got us jobs, like regardless of the price. They'd be like, you know, you guys were a little bit more expensive, but Emily sat and talked to me about Pink Floyd, and it was fucking dope.
There was one guy who's like the handle of his email address, it was his first and last name, and then what was it? It was at slythetove.com, which is a Lewis Carroll poem.
It's a word from a poem.
'Twas brillig and the slithy toads did gimble in the wabe, all rotten where the bower grows and the mome raths outgrave.
What? What?
I don't know. There's really important information that I should have shared.
If you start reading Lewis Carroll, you'll get a lot of electrical work.
But no, that was just, I saw it, and I could have not said anything for fear of, like, being labeled a nerd, or that was pretty much it. But I just ran with it and kept a smile on my face, and really the one thing about customer service is even if you're having a shit day, people can hear a smile through the phone. And
that sounded so fucking corporate.
Oh, sorry.
No, but it's true. I heard that shit when I worked at Dell too. It's just be real with people, man.
But it's true.
Act like a fucking human being. Don't act like a computer. Yeah. Don't be fake with people. Don't feel like you have to be corporate when you answer the phone. Just like talk to somebody like it's your buddy calling on the phone. And when you're out in the field, talk to them the same way. Like, ask about their kids. Ask how many kids they've got. Ask where they're from. Like, get to know your customers. Yeah, because most of the guys around are not doing that.
No, we really are. We really are still animals, and people don't give themselves enough credit for how much emphasis we put on inflection when we speak and when we listen. And so, even if you're smiling and you're half-assing your mood, if the person on the other end of the phone could potentially be your customer, and if they're sensitive enough to pick up on that, you might have just lost yourself, anywhere from hundreds to thousands of dollars just off like that first impression. Yeah. And
so this is about 25 minutes. I kind of want to start wrapping it up just because it's cold, and I don't want to give give away all of our secrets.
We don't have secrets.
I know.
What are your secrets?
We don't have any fucking secrets. We're kind of an open book through and through. So what do you think was some of the things, like pick 3 of the things that you think that we did fucking outrageously good at? Like,
outrageously
what
good?
What do you think set us apart and what you're proud of the way that we did as a company?
First of all, I would say not that we ever really had like a formal mission statement, but just our 2 personalities as far as running a business. Honestly, it didn't feel like running a business. It felt like talking to people every day and crunching numbers and doing a bunch of paperwork, but I love people and I love interacting with people, so I think that first of all, like, our personalities won us, if not every job, then a lot of them. The other one was, number 2, kind of the same thing as personality, but as far as you and I being business owners, the way that we communicated, and that comes from our relationship and the relationship that we have together. We're very honest. I think we maybe have like one fight every like 3 years, but if something's wrong, we talk about it. We don't.
We kept business and kept home personal, which was not always. Like, it was tough. I mean, just neither of us were drawing an income. We both just poured our work in, like 20 hours a day, 7 days a week, and just did whatever we had to do.
I loved every second of it because I love this man, and working with him is my dream. And so, I got through the days in the office hoping for a chance to get asked back out into the field. So number 2 was, I guess, like intercompany communication, not how we communicate with our customers.
Kind of, like,
but how we communicate with each other.
We worked with the people that worked for us. Like, we were tight, man. We were thick as thieves. Yeah. And we tried to make sure that everybody was taken care of. They made sure we were taken care of. Like, they did some pretty amazing shit for us. Yep. With money not even being on the table. Yeah. And we tried to do the same as well.
Number 3, I would say, would be like communication and follow through even after the last check is cleared. There are times where it'll be months and months and months, and a customer still, even though we're closed, will text or call and need help, or have a problem and need something. But that was really the one-off. Like, the way that we kept the business that we had was like, we had a really strict procedure for after the fact, keeping the lines of communication open. And it sounds really cheesy, but the first way to do that is to we had this email template, and we would ask for reviews kind of across the board, Google, Facebook, Yelp, all of that. So, it was kind of again, we're only children. It was asking, for them to put their appreciation out on social media and let other people know how much we appreciated us, or how much they appreciated our work.
Yeah, and we got so cool with so many of our customers that they would hands down, they're like, yeah, dude, I'll give you a review, no problem, just email me the link. And I would ask most of them, like, as I'm cleaning up, and be like, hey, we're probably going to send you a review link. Would you mind throwing a review up on Facebook or on Google or something like that? So we had really great reviews.
Yeah.
I mean, I feel like on Google for our area, we were probably the youngest company. We had the most reviews, and we had better reviews than everybody
5-star
in
reviews
this
almost
city.
across the board. So I think that would be number 3, is just even after the job is done, don't ever think that just because the last checking has cleared and the job is done, that means that your relationship with that customer, even as a business relationship, is over. Because especially with trade work, if people need electrical work, chances are they're going to need it again.
And most of the work is referral based. Like, people always ask, like, hey, do you know a good plumber? Do you know a good electrician? And I think we probably got more work from
other trades.
I don't know. That's kind of a toss-up. We didn't really go on a strictly word-of-mouth basis because we were so new that we just had to keep the phones ringing. So a lot of our stuff came from, like, Angie's List and Home Advisor and House and Thumbtack and all these other places.
Yeah.
But a lot of most of our customers that came back to us would send our information to another customer.
Yeah.
We got a lot of work off referrals.
Yep.
Okay, so the 3 things, I'm going to do the ones that I think that we could have improved on.
Okay. Go for it.
First and foremost, I think our pricing, I think we probably were too cheap, or we just didn't build in enough hours or pat ourselves enough. That's one thing that I think about more and more. It made it really tough to live when we weren't paying ourselves, either of us, and we had to pay mortgage and get groceries, but we were paying our employees. So, I don't know, I guess just the money side of it. What else do I think we could have improved on? I guess something we just talked about as a positive is trying to make sure that if you and your wife are doing this, or your significant other, if you guys are doing this together, like, really figure out a way for yourselves to be able to keep work at work and home at home, because it's very easy when you're all day long, you're like calling each other and talking to each other, and it's from, like, 7 in the morning until 5 in the afternoon, and then when you get home, there's still 30 things that you need to talk about. And then I would get home and I'd start making videos and start doing marketing, and I'd be asking her, like, hey, oh shit, did we ever get back to that person? So it's like all day, every day, every night, it just became about business all the time. And that's one thing that I didn't like, which is another reason why I decided to close down shop, because I value my life more than working, to provide for a life.
Yeah.
And the last thing I think we could have done differently is I probably hired too soon. I think that really swept my legs out from under me. I got into a hurry thinking, like, I saw all this work coming in. It was fucking nuts how quickly we got just overwhelmingly busy. So I knew I needed a helper, but I also regret not pushing people off and saying no to work that I couldn't take on.
Yeah, say, I'm sorry, I'm scheduled 2 months out, I'm a one-man show, and again, if you want to wait for quality work, if you'll wait for us, we will take care of you.
Dude, and people will.
Yeah.
There's so many people that would wait a month for us. They're like, no, man, we got a really good vibe from you, or we got, somebody said something awesome about you, so we'll wait a month. It's not an emergency. And I guess I just thought that we had to hit all these customers all at the same time, and I started thinking about the dollars every month, and like, the money is what really fucked up everything. And so I would have waited to hire. I think I hired within the first, like, 3 or 4, 5 months, something like that. I hired on a helper, which wasn't bad, and then I hired on another helper, which was really more about, like, I had a buddy that needed a help and he needed a job, and I thought, like, I've seen him work. He's been a welder, he's been a carpenter, he knows all the trades, so, like, getting him into this was lickety split. And he's still an electrician to this day, but having to pay 2 guys full time, while these 2 guys are not even earning an income, that really fucked with us hard, and we struggled through it for a year. But I think that I probably should have waited waited till 12 months, slowed the work down enough, rejected as much work as I could have, and just saved up a nest egg enough for me to have, at 12 months, have enough to hire somebody and not have to worry about payroll and payroll taxes and all that stuff. So
can I do one more?
Go for it.
Can we do a fourth, what I would have changed?
Sure.
Okay. Let's do a fourth, what was awesome too, just to keep things, even.
All right.
Because even numbers are the best kind of numbers. The other thing I would have changed.
I don't know about that. I like 7. Seven's
he
pretty
likes
fucking
odd
cool.
things. I have 3 boobs. What was I going to say? Oh, okay, number 4. I think we should have waited to start the company in the first place. We started. We were both so excited when he passed his master electrician exam. I mean, just like, it was like New Year's and Christmas and both of our birthdays and like the birth of a firstborn son all in one day. It was incredible. And instead of taking a step back and maybe being a little bit more humble about our abilities or just realistic about what we could handle, I think things might have turned out differently if after passing your master electrician exam, you had gone to work for a master electrician as like literally apprenticing under a master as a master and do that for
learning how to do the business from a guy that's been doing it. And that's the other thing, is I was working for a guy, the very first guy that ever hired me and got me into this trade. And I think if I would have stuck around and had that conversation with, like, let me kind of start stepping in and taking over some of the business stuff and just let me learn how to run a company. And if I would have done that for a couple of years, I think I would have hit the ground just on fucking fire on my own. But I was having to figure out a lot of shit, and there was a lot of hard lessons. And so that's the guy that I've gone back and worked for.
But
Sunrise
lessons
Electric.
learned or knowledge gained. So, I wouldn't trade it for anything, because
I wouldn't either. It was awesome.
It was amazing. We learned a lot about
time.
ourselves, a lot about each other, and it was probably one of the most humbling things that in almost 8 years we've done together.
Yeah.
And so the fourth thing that we did really well is that this guy does incredible work.
Yeah,
Just,
I think I'm doing the best work that
across
I've ever
the
done
board
now.
The things, and I know I've said this to you before, but the things that he can do to a space with electricity and lighting and symmetry, asymmetry, positioning, all of it it's astounding. It's incredible. It's literally like transforming a space into just being illuminated.
Yeah. I mean, that's the aesthetics to it. There's still a lot that I have to learn.
Yeah.
I'm pretty humble about the fact that I have decades to go in learning, and I think guys that have been doing this 20 years still would say that, the guys that last and stay in this, they realize how much there is to know and how much everything's changing all the time. New codes come out, new materials, stuff changes to LED. The city of Austin here starts like changing what materials you can and can't use, and they start requiring things that they don't tell you about, so you start failing inspections because the energy company that gives electricity would change something, but it wouldn't get updated in the city code, and like that. There's just so much all the time. This is one of, like, I feel like grooming pets would be like a kind of an easy job to get into. I'm sorry for any of you that are pet groomers, but like, fuck, man, I feel like just doing something simple that's high margin would have been a really great business to be into, because you get to earn money.
That's
trade,
not this.
Holy shit. From going from the field to owning your own company, it's a big different thing, man, and it's very involved and a lot of liability and so many fucking bills, and there's a lot to it. So who knows? We may do this again in the future. I
think we probably will.
Probably.
But with
the fire's in there now,
a lot more patience.
But I'm going to take a few years for sure, at least, and learn from a good man how to run a company. And I have no hope or desire or plan in any way to start a company again. But I'm just saying, like, if something were to happen, after a few more years of learning, or another decade of learning, I may do it again. I didn't hate it that much. I love my family more.
Oh, baby. Your family loves you. So to wrap it up, our advice is be the best you can be.
The army.
Knowledge is power. Pain is weakness. Leaving the body. No, I'm just kidding.
Do a lot more drugs. Just kidding.
That's why I married him.
So I'm Dustin. This is Emily. We used to be Livewire. Love y'all, motherfuckers.
Patience
Have a
is
good day.
prudence. Mwah.
Stop with the fucking juju slogans. I love you. Bye.
Bye.